Bungalow Bill here. It's time to get back into the Live Wood Neater campaign. Now, I have a very limited amount of time to the next council meeting, and I really want to take these 2 resource zones before then, and given that it takes 15 minutes to capture a tile, that's what my memory says at least, I barely have enough time to do this. So, I'm going to focus on this, and on finishing this vehicle before the next council meeting. I have quite a few things left to build, and I need to get into doing them as quickly as possible. So, I'm not going to show all of these fights, but I definitely will show the last one with the Deepwater Guard. Alright, so the sort of flak weapons that the Deepwater Guard have, in this case coming off of the Falkenheim, can definitely do damage to these air vehicles. I'm going to have to put a little bit in the way of thrusters or custom jet engines into these to give them some stability as this sort of thing happens. It's still fighting, it's just not in a particularly stable position. I've pulled in a paddle gun and a Jacob's Folly against 2 AWSs. This is a bit of a scary fleet for them, because this paddle gun costs... Well, actually AWSs cost more than they used to, but it costs about 3 AWSs. 4 before the hydrofoil change, and if I was intelligent about changing the AWS build so that they didn't have this expensive slab of hydrofoils, well, it would still probably cost about 4 AWSs. However, she can be a bit slow to turn, so while she would probably annihilate us with the guns if she can point successfully, her time on target will be fairly low, and the Jacob's Folly isn't much to worry about for us. Our primary enemies are accidentally getting in front of this turret, which, given that we'll just be circling, can happen, and this piece of land. I have lost these to land before, it will happen again. Okay, we're taking a little bit of missile fire. Very light though, 1% damage. Yeah, the paddle gun is going to have a lot of trouble getting time on target. This is one of the primary ways of destroying frontsiders. However, there are many frontsiders in the game that have very good turning rates. Also, we have to hope that we don't collide. That was very close. I shouldn't set them rotating in opposite directions like that. It's just asking for trouble. We've taken a little bit more chip damage. Okay, these guns are actually getting on target now. Definitely leaving a little bit of block confetti. Despite the fact that Deepwater Guard guns are generally not that effective, we are entirely made out of wood, so they are pretty effective against us. Still, not that much damage. There just wasn't that much time on target. We should be retargeting to the Jacob's Folly now, which, frankly, isn't going to hit us. We're just too fast. In my testing, anytime I had a high firing solution on crams, so mortar style, I wasn't even able to hit the Great White, despite being so large. Not terribly fast and not having a terribly tight turning radius. The AWS that I fixed some of the pitch characteristic issues on had repair tentacles, so now they all have repair tentacles, even though I just slapped them on one particular AWS just for repairing one vehicle. These definitely spend so much of their time in the air that they might as well not be water skimmers. And that's sort of a big issue with water skimmers in general, is that they might as well just not be water skimmers because gravity is so hilariously low that it would take almost nothing for me to make these things just fly. Okay, I'm getting back to this vehicle, which I very much do intend to finish building in this episode. The main priorities for me are to put in a few lift jets, finish out the armor, and then, get in ammo controllers, that sort of stuff. There are a few details, but at the moment, lift jets is the next priority. I slapped on a small number of custom jet engines really quickly, put them all into pitcher and pusher. I'm going to put some additional roll in later, and probably a little bit of central lift as well. However, I'm also going to be using the new propeller blades around the exterior as well, hopefully for a little bit of reduced cost flight. But I do want some central lift and that sort of thing as well that's well protected so that the propeller blades don't just get shot off because the wood holding onto them is so vulnerable. I'll determine if I want to put in more jets later, but I don't want to inflate the cost too much with way too many jets, so I'm going to prefer fewer rather than more. I'm also probably going to put in some overkill material storage, and the reason is that the fewer materials you have as a percentage in each ammo barrel, the less explosive damage it does when it blows up. However, it still processes just as much ammo, so I should be able to make my vehicle less chain reactive that way. So I'm putting a second AI onto the new ship, and it is for targeting the Sea-Whiz guns for when they're not shooting down projectiles, and I'm putting on a very rudimentary system. Basically, it shoots at the closest enemy with a slight multiplier bonus, and that's really all. Here is what is hopefully our last battle against the Deepwater Guard. Although, things like this from the Davy Jones outpost can actually hurt us because we're entirely made out of wood. However, we're trying to kill the Davy Jones outpost, and there are a few other Deepwater Guard vehicles in here, like the Marauder, and another Marauder apparently. There's also a scuttle gun here somewhere. Well, there's no scuttle gun in here somewhere. There was one close by on the world map, and I was under the impression that I clicked on it to bring it into the battle, but it appears that it is not in fact there, and it is primarily what I was worried about in this fight. Those shots are going to miss us by a mile. Our firepower is not phenomenal in terms of what's really required to kill the Davy Jones outpost. Our bouncing motion, I think, is making it a little bit hard for these slower velocity guns to hit us. At the moment, it looks like we're just going to be ignoring the Duster Marine and hoping that it doesn't do us too much damage. I didn't realize that Marauders sat so low in the water. They look like sea-skimming rockets. That's interesting. Okay, so we're taking some moderate cannon fire onto one of our ships so far. And haven't done excessive damage to the Davy Jones outpost. Really, to kill it quickly, we'd need the Poli Warriors, but they're quite slow, and I really needed to get this done before the next council meeting. So hopefully the amount of firepower we have here is going to be enough. Yeah, so those are some pretty hefty hits for such a lightweight boat. I needed to have spawned these two vehicles further apart. They're competing for airspace currently, it looks like. That's a big detonation in the Davy Jones outpost. It definitely has a few explodey parts, but it's so big and spread out that it's not detonating the entire craft, like some Deepwater Guard vehicles. We're getting a bit close, so it's actually possible that we'll take a Marauder shot. Down to 86% on one of the AWSs, which is not exactly phenomenal, but at least they're still fighting, and it's comparable to what the Davy Jones outpost is at, although that is primarily because they detonate a bit more than we do. Definitely for future longevity against some of the better factions, I am going to be looking into ring shields. I did a little bit of testing And it seems like it is not a huge commitment to get a fairly significant AC increase for wood. So armor is still holding up there for now, but it's getting pretty thin. Because I was messing around with a small front sider of about the same frontal area as the one that I'm currently building, and if memory serves, it was about 1300 engine power on my ring shields to get me to about 20 AC in the front, which is at the point where it'll provide a significant reduction to HE and frag damage, something that we sorely need. These sandblasters are definitely having a lot more trouble with the Davy Jones outpost than either single large missile barrages or just single massive guns. We're not getting into the meaty explodey bits as easily. And the Marauders are doing whatever it is exactly that they do here. Some of these vehicles, like the Davy Jones outpost, also put a lot less fire on you if you don't circle them. The fact that we're circling them means that they actually get to use all of their guns. Also, even though wood doesn't have a lot of armor, it still has a pretty fantastic amount of hit points, so we've done, what, about 1.5 million damage right now, and the Davy Jones outpost is at 81%. If it was made out of metal, we would have done significantly less damage, but simply this much wood still is a good sponge, and I think we're going to lose that AWS soon. It is fighting reasonably well until the end, though, so that's good. They aren't very heavily armored, though, so it doesn't really take much damage to bring them down, and that's sort of the case with all the vehicles here. Definitely fighting at a longer range would be very heavily to our advantage. There's also actually a reasonable amount of metal here that we have to get through. Taking off that cram cannon, although that's not very significant because we're not going to be taking much damage from the crams anyway. It's mostly the APS that I'm concerned about. And I can't tell how much it has because it has not number firepower. Happens sometimes, but it used to happen way more than it does now. So shield despawn.
Engaging now.
That info GUI button is new. Oh, okay, it's the V menu. I do wish that my ships automatically retargeted when an enemy started despawning. It doesn't need to be continued to be shelled when it's already scuttling. Yeah, she's still shooting. Oh, this camera is so bad. I'm not even on a sub-object, and it's like this. She should definitely switch broadsides, though. It would give me access to the armor on both sides of the ship instead of one, although by the time the armor's gone on one side, she's probably pretty close to scuttling. But not that bad. Having her switch broadsides occasionally would definitely give me a bit more longevity. At least for now. There is the fact that once I start going against some of the harder factions, and I'm a little bit concerned because I've already encountered a flounder, which I think is a hard mode vehicle, is what is considered a hard difficulty vehicle. If I run into those sorts of craft in harder factions, they'll just one-shot things like this. Things like the Rhea, which have guns that I'm usually not that scared about, even though they can punch through a reasonably significant amount of armor, will just completely annihilate these small wooden boats. Although I suppose it depends on how they're fused. I haven't checked that. If they're unfused, it might just do a through and through and not actually detonate the HE payload inside the craft. It could be significantly better than if they actually have a depth set on pen depth fuses and explode inside of my vehicles. There's also the fact that I'm not sure how well my ring shields are going to hold up to APHE, because if I'm only hardening my vehicle on one side, having internal detonations from APHE shells could be problematic. I might set up very small ring shields to just give me like an AC bonus of 5 or something, top and bottom, left and right, but I'll have to set them up really carefully because given how non-hardened my vehicles are going to be, I'm a bit concerned about ring shields and that sort of stuff detonating inside the vehicle because they have not enough protection. For front side, I can just put the ring shield in the back, and if the ring shield gets blown up, it won't really have anything to destroy other than a little bit of wood armor. Once with the other ring shields, like if I put one on the top or the bottom, it's either going to be really close to the top or the bottom of my vehicle and not protected that well, or it'll be kind of in the middle of my vehicle and absolutely shred it when it gets destroyed. I have a little bit of a similar concern for broadsiders if I ring shield them, is that it's going to be very hard to position the ring shield so that it doesn't just shred the vehicle. Cross that bridge when I come to it, though. Well, I'm glad they waited a little bit before doing that. Anyway, I think all that's left now is some building and capturing these Deepwater Guard territories. I've started the armor a little bit. There's still a lot of work to be done on the armor, and some of it's not optimal. Generally speaking, you want stuff like this to be aligned vertically or horizontally, so that if a kinetic projectile comes through, it has to take out a large amount of mass. I've sort of done that for some of them, but given the odd geometry here, it would take me a long time to actually set them all up vertically properly. But if I'm doing them like this, I can just hit F and have it fill in reasonably well, and a little bit more space for armor. And then it'll be time to put in real propulsion, detection. I'd like a bridge, but I might not be able to do that. And so on. Definitely going to make it to the next council meeting before I finish this, but hopefully it'll be done in time for the next real war. I do have a buffer because territories take a while to capture, and I still have some vehicles currently out. Oh, I missed this. It is actually a little bit unfortunate for me because since the Lightning Hoods managed to take this tile, it means that when they do this capture, they're capturing it for themselves instead of me. I was hoping I'd wind up with this tile, but I did not. This is the result of the Onyx Watch versus Twin Guard and Lightning Hood fight here. They managed to not fight very much, and given the time till the next council meeting, these ships are all going to stay here, and something fairly catastrophic might happen for me. Time for me to finish up my build as quickly as I can. However, the council meeting is going to wind up coming first. Excellent. The empty space is now filled with poles, exactly the way every one of my wooden ships should be. And here it is. I still have a fair amount of work to do on my new craft. And really there is a lot that I need to do before I can fight the Lightning Hoods. So basically any of these options where the enemy is the Lightning Hoods is off the table. And that's actually almost everything. I simply can't touch them at the moment. So since I can't afford this means this is my only option. Some of these have ridiculous numbers of commodity rewards. They're useless to me because I don't have a sufficient number of different designs to actually spend on them. I would just have to build a swarm of garbage, and that's not currently acceptable. Yeah, this number of commodities is not doing much for me. So it looks like I'll be fighting the Onyx Watch on my own. This is a sufficient amount of money for me to build a lot of ships to fight them with. However, they have some fairly chunky ships built now for me to go up against. So this may actually be moderately challenging. However, this is really all that I can do. Also, the fact that these have been toned down by, 80%, is a little bit obscene, given how large these are. Anyway, I'm going to pick the safe option. It's going to give me 2 hours of time to get some builds done, and hopefully I'll have something decent so that I'll actually be able to fight the lightning heads afterwards. I think I'm going to have to build a submarine. I usually don't build them, but I think it's going to be necessary for me to fight the lightning heads, especially because they have 2 Exodines currently. I'm also going to have to get some fairly big fights, some wars with a bunch of parties fairly soon, so that some of these factions don't just stack up tens of millions of materials. This is, it's a little absurd because they're not spending them against each other. It doesn't tell me how many some of these other guys have spare in the coffers, but it's probably a lot. Yes. A nice backdrop for my building. I am making a lot of garbage vehicles just to hold off the Onyx Watch while I build some stuff that's a little bit stronger. Nuts. I wasn't paying attention and didn't reinforce my fleet in time. So this is the fight that I'm stuck with. The main issue is just that the Alcazar is a really big piece of metal. And the Poly Warrior is going to get annihilated. There's some other vehicles here that'll provide some cover, but I kind of expect everything to die eventually. This doesn't look too bad until you realize that they have individual vehicles here that are spawning very close to me and are more expensive than my entire fleet. Alcazar, not really super duper intimidating, but it's going to be enough. It really will be. Here just goes the Nightingale doing Nightingale things. Oh, actually, the Alcazar might be nearly immune to something like the Poly Warrior. That missile barrage might just not be big enough. I also can't choose the target on it. It's radar guided, so what I get is what I get. Yeah, the Alcazar has barely been scratched. Okay, some are coming in for the Nightingale. That's actually a good thing, because it's something that we can kill fairly productively. It gets ammo racked. We're holding up for a little bit, but that's really temporary as far as I'm concerned. I really need my new airship to get in and to hit the Alcazar with some high-powered cram volleys to actually do a fight like this in a reasonable amount of time. Fortunately, these sandblasters are getting damage through, but it's just not very much. If we can knock out Lamb's nodes, the Poly Warrior would start to be able to get damage through, but it's going to be too late by the time it can. Also, there is some APS on the enemy vehicles. It looks like this is probably an engine failure, which means that we will be taking consistent damage. If it was just crams, I wouldn't be that worried. Yep, still annihilating the missile barrages. I really just needed the fleet with more Poly Warriors to be here. I am outcosted by way too much. None of my missiles are getting through. The sandblasters are just going to take an absolute eternity to get the job done. I'll turn off the recording because probably not much interesting is going to happen for a while. And I'll I'll see what happens one way or the other. Also, I have something to do in about an hour, so this battle is probably going to be it for me until I come back later this afternoon to finish up the build that I want to do. More like later tonight. We're still getting in a little bit of damage, and the Alcazar has lost her APS secondaries, at least most of them. However, her LAMS nodes have been holding up really well, which has been unfortunate for me. I just needed a few hits against those to let the missile barrages through, which never really happened. Anyway, I'll finish her off with the army of Poli warriors and then continue work on my actual vehicles that I'm hoping will be able to fight the Onyx Watch a bit more productively, although there was a missile strike through there now. It's too late. A bit more work on my vehicle, some stuff to do, that sort of thing. Now is my chance at revenge. How many Poli warriors does it take to beat an Alcazar? At this point, we do actually have the resource advantage. However, these are blocks of wooden poles, so for what it's worth. I also don't know why they're allowed to just move around so much. Like, the speed is 18 meters per second. Why can it do this?
Receiving.
Anyway. Let's see what happens. The Alcazar has been defanged slightly, but it still has had the opportunity to recharge its LAMs, which will probably do a lot of work. Yeah, that's a big problem. However, we're getting respectable damage through. Right, enough missiles will solve just about any problem. I did not see much in the way of LAMs on that last one. The fact that we bounce a lot may protect us a bit from some of those shells, but it does look like they're either timed or altitude. So we are taking some damage, but it's not massive. The Alcazar is not really defending itself anymore. What is it that they say? Quantity is a quality all of its own. And that was really my mistake in the first battle, was that I let my advanced force get a bit too far away from the main fleet. So now we just have to kill the partisan, which actually dealt a large amount of damage to my fleet in the previous fight because they were ignoring it. So I'm just going to let this despawn because we're targeting it with all of our missiles. And just slowing things down a lot. Our fleet was just ignoring it. So my really fast and evasive vehicles were getting right next to it and just eating broadsides directly to the face. And that hurts. 72 cram firepower, even if it's all HE, absolutely wrecks wooden boats. The rub on it is also how delicate the partisan is. We're having trouble hitting her because she is not really above the surface of the water and the waves are so large. But 69%. She's basically dead. It may take a while, though, because she needs to be on a crest when her missiles come in. Or I may have to tweak the missiles a little bit so that they come in at a higher angle, but it looks like we got there. Alright, that was sort of the first main worrying force of the Onyx Watch. Now that that's been taken care of, I should have time to finish my vehicle, which I really do want to get done before the end of the episode, even if I don't actually use it during this episode. Haven't done a lot since the last check-in, but I've tossed on some LAMS nodes, almost all of which are connected, even if some of these connections are slightly questionable. I am really feeling the time pressure to finish this one, so at this point, all I have to do is slap together the wooden armor, put on some detection, put on some propellers, and possibly a few more CJEs, but I think we're actually pretty good on them because our vehicle's not that heavy. Yeah, the armor cost will leave a little bit of something to be desired, even though it will increase a bit. Oh, and I need my shield projector. There's no reason that it can't just touch my LAMs because when I say shield projector, I need shield projectors, but I also need ring shields. So there's no reason it can't just touch the lambs. They're very precise in the way that they shoot off their energy. If you watch a video by Sam's Stash that he has on his channel somewhere, it's interesting that these aren't connecting anywhere, that he has on his channel somewhere, you will see a test where he cuts a Megalodon in half using these. So check that out if you haven't seen it before, which it's quite likely that you have. Looks like it's only the shield generator block that actually supports anything. I don't use these very much, so I didn't really know that, but give or take, this is what I'm going to look at for my shield generator. I would like a larger enclosed area. I may stack these. We'll have to see. I'm gonna give the generators and protectors a little bit of a test once I really have things going, but have a bit more to do in this vehicle. Mostly just building out the wooden armor and such, and hopefully I'll be back in a moment when that's done. Alright, it's the following day. Last night, off of camera, once I got back to my apartment, I finished up this vehicle that I've decided to call the Incredible Husk. Incredible being a lack of credibility, and it is heinously ugly. I remembered that you can't place shield projectors and shield rings at the same time, so we just have a shield ring. This will hover sort of over the enemy, and only the front is protected by the shield ring, not the bottom. So we'll see if that comes back to bite us. Also, because I'd made a lot of money while building this thing, I have 5 more of them currently building. Yeah, and it costs about $250,000. So you can sort of question, perhaps, the intelligence of putting 2 million materials into a completely non-combat tested vehicle. However, we'll just have to see how it does. I have less than an hour until the next council meeting, and I almost certainly have to build a submarine within that time, because I will probably be fighting the Lightning Hoods, and I need something to fight them with. I'm not going to build a submarine this episode. We're going to end it with one last big fight. Something to remember is not only are these made out of wood, but I have literally never used them in combat. I'm also not even sure if anything that I'm fighting with here can really kill the rooks, because the husks are supposed to fight over their enemies. They're going to be incredibly ineffective, and I never finished the laser turret that I wanted. I just wanted to get into the battle. So we'll just have to see how this goes. Spread these out a little bit. It's nice that the asterisk follows your forces now. There's a point where it didn't used to, so you never really knew if you were bringing in a force or not. At the current point, we're not really going to have a lot going in it at a time. I could probably turn this up a little bit higher, but I'm just going to live with how it is for the time being. Try to get some decent performance out of my computer as far as the frame rate is concerned. Straighten out the camera. There is a lot in here. Okay, so one of the rooks spawned in first. That's not what I was hoping for, but I will simply have to deal with it. Anyway, let's see what happens. Well, hopefully it's recording desktop audio. I see the desktop audio thing going, although I'm not hearing anything on my headset. That's because my headset volume was too low. Alright. The Incredible Husk has not destroyed itself yet. I think it has pitch angle on. I will have to fix that for the other ones. Its lambs appears quite successful at the moment. That was a lot of HE damage. Ooh, yeah, I don't want those. Ooh, yeah, I edited that already. It also has a lot of anti-air missiles. But I don't really want these to sort of run into combat too much. It looks like one of the enemy ships is just sort of chilling on land. That's fine, it won't sink if they do that, so it's probably the optimal way of them functioning. These crams are timed only. I don't have inertial fuses on them, which I potentially should. They're also pure HE, which is a lot of fun, but not really optimal. Although with those kind of near misses, they might actually be better than frag. So we're programmed, yeah, to sit like this. That's really bad. We do have lambs on the side, but they've either been shot off or they just weren't seeing shells that are that small.
Engaging now.
Yeah, so things with those sorts of APS barrages are going to be the most deadly to us because we just simply weren't seeing the shells in time for the lambs to deal with it. And we don't have ring shields on the side, so we don't want to get surrounded like that. But we hurt. We hurt a lot. So, right, our armor cost is like 5% or something ridiculous. Yeah, so we're an absolute glass cannon. We just need to absolutely destroy things before they destroy us. The glaive is going to be an issue if it spawns directly under us. Fortunately, I have more Incredible Husks to back this one up. I should probably put a ring shield to boost AC on the bottom. Let's see if I go into build mode if it tells me what my AC boost is. 8 to 15, that's a little low, but it's acceptable. Also, it looks like my engines are not quite keeping up, so I will have to put more on. I'll probably put a small steam engine on or something. I couldn't really test it. They're not bad, though. I've got 1k free engine power floating at the moment. Alright, a glaive spawned in.
Engaging
Let's
now.
terminate that before it terminates us. We're still firing at a dead ship at the moment. We're firing interceptors at something. I don't know what though. They do have an angle of incidence set on them. Our reload on the crams is a little slow as well. It's 30 seconds. I didn't really test it because I was building them without ammo. Although the glaive's not that scary if we're not over it. I was mostly worried about its anti-aircraft laser. Let's see, the Husk is still at 97%, which is pretty good. Ooh. I thought Oh, it's these that are having the issues with the connectivity, I think. Yeah, so our lambs aren't keeping up.
Listening. Engaging now.
Husk is still at 97% though. I'm gonna pause so that I can maneuver a little bit better to see how short we are on pumping energy. Okay, so yeah, that's gonna be a huge issue. I thought they would have significantly more pumping power, or more engine power when under load than it does, because I never did a full load test on the engines. So that'll be an easy fix. It actually has enough spare space for me to just drop in more fuel engines though, instead of dropping in a steam engine. But yeah, its lambs is having a little bit of trouble. If we can't back off faster, we're not going to be able to shoot the redoubt with our crams. Still not doing terribly. Hopefully we can get another Husk in at some point. Oh, that's a lot of crammage for not a large vehicle. Those weren't good shots either. Mostly due to the bobbing, I'd assume. I'm surprised these are all still actually alive. I should probably turn down our lamb's range a little bit. I have it set at the default, which is 500 meters, and it's less efficient at that range. So we took a little bit of laser damage from the glaive, but I don't think it's that scary at the moment, given all the damage it took itself. Husk is still at 97. Given the number of blocks that had fallen off, I thought it was going to be doing worse than that. Is that it for the redoubt? Can it take more? It can take a little more. 2 damage to 52%. Oh, the glaive's despawning. No need to fight that. Let's see, there's a stockade. I'll target this stockade instead. Still a lot more to fight, but we're still on our first husk, which is good. I'm expecting to spawn in another one soon, but they do have a lot of volume, so that may not be possible until some of these guys die. These guys are still chugging away, though. The husks should probably fight from a little bit further. I was worried about their depression not being good enough, and that might actually be an issue. It's not that bad, though. No, they're getting these shots in, but still, fighting from further would give them a better chance of their ring shields working. And even just bringing the AC of wood up to 15 is pretty good. Not sure what happened there. I doubt our cram components have been disabled, although it is possible. We don't have much armor over our crams.
Engaging now.
Okay, well, the green field currently looks like the scariest thing spawned in, so we'll make sure to get our front facing that instead. I do want to make a sailboat, but the way that masts go down like this makes me sort of question that a little bit. First cram shot coming in. Air bursting on the mast. Saving the green field from absolutely getting destroyed. Are these screws turning? Barely. I doubt that's going to hit, even though we're barely moving. No, maybe. No. Oh, I did find an issue with the gun that I've been using now in 3 places that's on the Incredible Husk. I forgot to turn up the priority of the CWIS controller, so it often just doesn't do anything. I fixed that on the Husk, but I need to fix that on the other vehicles and then retrofit them. I haven't currently done that. Still only 1 husk. Let's see what the volume on it is. We might not ever be able to spawn in another one. 23,000 volume. So we're gonna have to kill a few more Onyx Watch ships, and by the time we do that, we won't even really need another one. That was a pretty powerful impact. That's a bit of a long shot. Oh, but it hit. Didn't get an explosion effect. Hopefully it didn't just despawn the shell. Looks like it did some damage, so that's probably not the issue. I'm assuming it took that shot because there wasn't enough barrel depression to hit this ship. The shell might have detonated underwater. It looks like we're not getting explosion effects for that. It's hard to tell. It looked like this was shooting a bow chaser or something. Maybe the gun's on the stern? In either case, the gun's not there anymore. I heard crams coming from the left, so I was checking to see if it was another husk spawning in, but we're still not there yet. So one of our copters going down. I believe that puts us down to 2, basically. Oh, yeah. I lost track of the other really damaged one. I suppose Rambot is helping a lot here. I don't have repair bots on any of these craft. Not even one. Oh, the furnace is in. Previously, the furnace had been taking me a very long time to kill with my vehicles because of a lack of firepower. I do not expect that to be the case here. Down to 87%. Our volley was not great. Right now we're keeping up decently with our power requirements. Even though the LAMS is being used, perhaps it's just not being used that heavily. I'll definitely add in 2 engines if I can, though. There's a lot of dead space in the side pods because I made them way longer than they need to be to hold the guns. But so far, pretty good showing for the Husk. It's still not going to be enough to take on the Lightning Hoods, especially because it uses crams, which are just simply not going to hit vehicles like the Exodine. I was considering making a supercavitation base railgun submarine, but against something like the Exodine, it's going to spend too long not hitting, I think, because it has the issue that the Exodine, although it does do close passes, also likes to fight at a long range. So I think, we're spawning in something big. I think it's us actually, not the enemies. Oh, we spawned in 2 things at once. We spawned in the Husk and the Straussland. That was pretty good. But it also likes to fight at a long range, like it does these big elliptical passes, and we'll just be shooting through so much water that I think even with supercavitation base rounds, we're going to have a lot of trouble. Oh, this Straussland is not going to be happy. It is not a robust craft. Although, those are some pretty optimistic shells coming out of this Husk. And yeah, taking that kind of HE down into a wooden deck is not really something it can tolerate.
Listening.
Hopefully that'll speed things up a little bit. I think we're having some slowdowns from collision calculations.
Listening. Engaging now.
Alright, the furnace is despawned. This one's still pitching down. I'll retrofit all of them later. And then for the next episode, definitely get onto the submarine. Definitely having a little bit of trouble getting damage through onto the Rook. Which is... oh, those are just our shells missing it. Just had an angle where it was really hard for me to see exactly what was going on. There we go. And still maybe too much of a glancing blow. That didn't do that much damage. These shells really have to get much more direct hits to do anything real. I'm glad I finally have some big cram cannons though. It takes way too long to kill the Onyx Watch without them. I don't think I'm really going to kill the Onyx Watch in the less than an hour that I have left, but hopefully I'll be able to take a lot of their resource zones away from them. And then we'll see how things shake out later. But next episode, definitely going to be submarine building and probably making it to the next council meeting. Actually, almost certainly, because I'm probably going to spend more than an hour building the submarine. Which means that if we wind up against the Lightning Hoods, which this last council meeting makes it look like will be nearly inevitable, I'm going to have to just let them take some of my territory. Spawning in one more Husk and probably the Lance as well. The Onyx Watch are going to need some bigger ships to actually productively damage the Husks, although they were in the beginning of this fight when the Husk was way more outnumbered. You know, something like the Alka-Seltzer that we lost to earlier, or whatever it's called. So I'm not missing something. I'm pretty sure this is the last vehicle. Although I'm not seeing... Oh, there they come. I was wondering when those crams were actually going to make it here. I think this one's probably reloaded, but it probably doesn't have the depression. There we go. It's backing off now. It approached way too far. It can't back as quickly as it can approach, which is a little bit of a weakness. Well, there we have it. And that is going to be the end of the episode. I hope you all enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you in the future.